I'm Vanessa Joy, and I'm here to give you a practical guide to choosing between DSLR or mirrorless. It was about 5 years ago that I wrote an article on f-stoppers about why I would never shoot mirrorless professionally. And for the record, I still kind of stand next to that article because mirrorless, at least at the time, isn't what it is today. And the appearance of it, which was my biggest point there, the appearance of it was unprofessional. And I could not appear unprofessional to my clients that were paying me thousands and thousands of dollars to be a professional wedding photographer at their event. So I'll link to that article down below. Feel free to hate me on it, it's fine. But what I want to do for you is break down mirrorless versus DSLR. What are the pros and cons? Here's what it boils down to. These are tools, right? Mirrorless or DSLR or Micro Four Threes or whatever it is, they are all tools. Who you are as a photographer, it's about what you do with the tools that you're using, not necessarily, what the tools are. These cameras are not going to make or break who you are as a photographer, right? They're not. They're just not. Yes, I will say since shooting more mirrorless, I've certainly learned to look at things a little bit differently. It has absolutely changed and evolved my shooting style, and I do shoot differently, and I think it has helped me grow as a photographer, but I'm still using my DSLR. So before we jump into this, make sure that you download my free posing inspiration guide. We could all use some inspiration. Get that in the link below with lots of ideas on how to pose groups and individuals. Here's how we can break this down. Number one thing that, at least for me and probably all women and even guys are thinking about is the weight. If you are a wedding photographer, you are 100% thinking about the weight of your camera and lenses and bags and all the schlepping that you have to do. Everyone thinks, oh, mirrorless must be lighter, right? Because there's no mirror, it's a smaller body. Well, maybe. So here's what I've got on this hand. The body itself, this is the whole body of the Canon 1DX. We'll just say DSLR from now on. All right, so that's my whole DSLR body. This right here, technically, I've got a battery grip on the bottom here. So this is actually the body of my mirrorless. Yes, it's definitely smaller, but when I shoot it like this, I'm kind of like, my pinky falls off. It's very forward heavy because of the lens, and it's just not as natural, and it's a little bit too small for me to really hold on to this in a sturdy way. So I choose to put the battery grip on it. That might not be your choice, and that's totally fine, but I want to give you a practical and how I use this, and this is my channel, so go somewhere else. Anyway, don't go anywhere else. Sit down, stay a while. So now that I've put that on, the body size, it's not that much smaller. I mean, it is a little bit, and it's definitely lighter, but we're not talking like milestones and pounds here. All right, but then what else do we have? We have the lens that goes onto it. Now, I've got all these gorgeous RF lenses. We'll talk about them because your lens choice is definitely something you want to consider when you're thinking about the tools for photography. But on both of these cameras, I have an 85mm lens, and this is the RF 85 1.2 on the mirrorless camera, and then this is the EF 1.4 on the DSLR. And right now, the DSLR is definitely still heavier, even though this lens kind of looks a little crazy, like big. It looks even bigger than the camera, which is fine, but there's not a huge weight difference. This is definitely heavier. So I did want to talk about the lenses just in general. Let's put these both on their sides here. If anybody asks, by the way, everyone always asks me where I get this. It does say Vanessa Joy here. This is from Kawa Pro Gear. I did hear they're not taking orders anymore, but who knows? All right, but let's compare some of the others. So these are the 85 lenses. These are the 50s, and the RF 50, definitely heavier. And why are they heavier? There's a lot of reasons why it's heavier. Well, first of all, let's just take this off here, right? We've got a 77mm here and a 72 here. So just because of the nature of how it has to shoot and be, up against the sensor versus, shooting with the mirror and all that type of stuff, the RF lenses do have to be bigger. I am not totally up on the tech on exactly why. And then also some of these have image stabilization. Not this 50, I don't believe, no. All right, but some of them do have image stabilization, which is why they are larger and heavier. But as of right now, I want to say this 50 is heavier. I don't have the spec in front of me right now, but I'm pretty sure that the RF is heavier. So just comparisons. And then I have two lenses here that are both 2.0 lenses. This is a 135 2.0, and this is the 28 to 70 2.0, which is a really cool lens. Definitely heavier than this one right here. I'm just comparing 2.0 lenses. Just wanted to give you an idea. So I just want to show you just kind of some of the lenses because they attribute to the weight factor, but also your choices. Now the lenses that are coming out for the RF line of lenses for the mirrorless, they're pretty cool. This 28 to 70 2.0 is amazing. And you cannot adapt these RF lenses to go onto your DSLR. You can, however, adapt your DSLR lenses to go on to your mirrorless camera, but it's actually physically impossible to adapt these to go to here because of the way they work with how close they are to the sensor and things like that. So lens choice, especially since our lenses typically outlive our bodies, is something you should think about when you're deciding whether to go with DSLR mirrorless. What lenses are available? What lenses will be coming out soon? Let's talk a little bit more about the actual use of these cameras, okay? So I'm a wedding photographer. I also do portraits and things like that, but weddings, that's my bread and butter. So primarily I am shooting weddings. The DSLR, this 1DX series in particular, this has a lot of weather resistance that this EOS R does not. Again, I love this camera, but I'm not bringing this on a wedding right now because if I have to go shoot in the rain for whatever reason, which certainly happens a lot, I don't want to have to worry about what umbrella I'm going to have to carry or get my assistant to hold it above me to make sure that I'm not ruining my camera. With this one, just last week, I was shooting on set at a commercial that was being produced. It was 40 degrees outside. It was drizzling or raining the entire time, and I'm outside for hours. I had no problem with this camera outside getting wet the entire time. I mean, the body itself is more durable in addition to the weather resistance. So for me, I want my cameras to be built like a tank. And that's another reason why I'm still DSLR, because I know it's not built as durable as weather resistant. Some of the other things to think about for me, I am not a huge fan of EVF, the electronic viewfinder. I'm used to an optical viewfinder. Maybe that's just because, I don't know, I'm old and it's what I've always shot, and I do understand that. But when I look through the viewfinder in a mirrorless camera in the R, my eye takes a little bit to adjust back and forth. Now, let me tell you about the pros of the electronic viewfinder though. I thoroughly enjoy being able to use exposure simulation where I set my exposure and actually see it change in the electronic viewfinder or the back of the screen, which is really one of the things I've been doing for a very long time with my DSLR. I flip it into live view and I get my exposure using that exposure simulation so I can see exactly what's happening right there on the screen as I change my exposure. And I really like it because I use it as I change my white balance as well, so I can see it going warm or cooler. So that's definitely a plus. But as far as the electronic viewfinder through the actual viewfinder, I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't hate it. I won't say it bothers me as much as the initial shock did, and they're definitely getting better, so they're better for us to look through. But I have heard people say they get headaches from it. There's that. It's little things like that you want to consider. If you're shooting a 10, 12, 14-hour wedding day and an electronic viewfinder gives you a headache by hour 2, no thanks. Well, for you rapid fire shooters, the DSLR tends to typically be a less fast frames per second or lower frames per second capable in a DSLR versus the mirrorless. I'm pretty sure that's true. No, I know that's true. Sometimes I just gotta remember these things and think, check my knowledge, all the facts in there. So that tends to be one of the things that is a little bit better about the mirrorless cameras, is that they're faster. There's no lull in between. It depends on what body you have. I know people complain about some of the mirrorless cameras and having like a lull between all of firing of the shutter. With the new 1DX Mark III that's coming out, they just released at the time of this recording some of the statistics with that, and that has 16 frames per second for the regular shutter, the mechanical shutter. And then if you switch over basically to the mirrorless or the electronic shutter, that actually goes up to 20 frames per second. So it's fast, and it's faster than, at least right now, I believe all mirrorless cameras. So it's really, really great. Not that I shoot, by the way, that fast. I never put either one of my cameras into anything except for a single shot mode. It's just not me, but that really might affect you if you're shooting sports or race cars or animals in flight or something of that nature. So that is really good to know. What else? What else are some of the comparisons? Those are really the big ones. Battery life is another thing to consider. So with the mirrorless, you always have that electronic viewfinder on. It's gonna suck a little bit more battery, which is another reason why you want typically that battery grip there, at least if you're an event photographer and you don't want to carry a million batteries. With the DSLR, I can use one battery and it gets me through the entire day. Granted, I have backup batteries, but one battery and I am good. So it's not using up as much battery life. Another big argument with DSLR versus mirrorless is, well, mirrorless is the newest technology. Why would you not want the newest technology? I don't think as a photographer, you need to have the newest technology for your photography. I think you need to have the best tool for you, for your photography. It doesn't necessarily have to be the newest. Now, do I think you should stay up to date? Yes. Do I think you probably should consider or at least experiment with a mirrorless camera? Absolutely, I certainly have, and I have been one that's been vehemently against it for a while. But I know that right now, at least with the mirrorless cameras that are out, they're still not the right tool for me because they're not as durable. They're not built as tanks. I will say I like the lens choices on them a lot. So that's really encouraging me that at some point I am going to move to mirrorless. Oh, the other thing, 2 card slots. I do need 2 card slots, at least for my weddings. I do take this out for portrait sessions and, you know, smaller shoots like that where I'm not as concerned about immediate dual backup. Those are all the things I can think of. I try to make it very practical, like what are the things that actually affect me on a daily basis between mirrorless and DSLR. Ultimately, choose the right one for you, the right tool for you. Rent them if you want to experiment with them, but don't get hung up on spec sheets and this person's opinion, even my opinion. Just go with whatever tool is going to work for you. But that is what is working for me. To sum up, I am right now still in the DSLR trend primarily. I cannot wait for the 1DX3 to come out. That hybrid type camera is gonna be really exciting, and I'll be sure to bring it on for a video to go over that when it's out. Make the right choice for you and make the right choice here and hit subscribe and ring that bell so you get notifications so you know when videos are popping up. They're popping up all the time, and I try to bring you the newest stuff, the best stuff, and the most practical information to help you be a better photographer. I'm Vanessa Joy.